Okay, well, welcome back. I thought I'd just do another video and up-to-date you on a few things and just run through it again like you're arriving for the first time and seeing it for the first time, so you know what it is and some of the things that I had to do to make it run properly. So I thought we'd begin with the oil pump, because this is a Falcon XB 6-cylinder oil pump, and I put this in, and initially it was good, but when the oil got really hot it was failing to hold a steady oil pressure low down, and I did check it in the end again and found that it was a bit worn. So I decided to take this crank driven one off. This was driven up inside on the back of the crankshaft up in here, and the intake for it was here, and although it worked at higher RPM, it was letting me down and it wasn't reliable enough at idle. So I decided, well, I can't have that, we're going to do away with that. So I bought this oil pump here. This is a Savvy one, or what I'd call a BDG, and it's belt driven pump, and it's running at 1.5 to 1. I made it, geared it up a bit more, and it sucks oil now from the tank. Instead of going up into here, it's coming up into the pump. And in this little valve here, industrial valve, there's a ball, and when I hit the priming pump, that ball is forced down onto the intake side of that and blocks it off, and oil is forced up to the pump, also up through here, and fills up the whole oil gallery system. So I've got 20 pound or more oil before I even turn it over. Now this is only here for dismantling the system, it just stays on. And so I have 20 pound of pre-oil pressure, and then I can just turn on the ignition and hit the button, and she's live, and I'm very happy with that. It gives me 20 pound reliable oil pressure no matter what the oil temperature is, and it runs about 45 psi cold or hot, and so that is absolutely perfect. You don't want too much oil pressure, they're just wasting horsepower really. So that's the first thing. The other thing about this engine is that it wouldn't run on the bottom 5 cylinders, and I couldn't figure this problem out for a long time. I'd prime the engine, start it up, and it would run, and a couple of minutes later the bottom 5 cylinders would stop, and it was driving me mad. And I had compression, you know, spark and fuel and all that, so it had to be something to do with the valve train. So in the end I took the bottom lifters out, and they were sent away to have some parts made, and the guts of these LS1 type lifters or Commodore V6 lifters, the same size, this section here was taken out, and this section here down the bottom where the chamber is had this little piece made which drops into there, then the spring, and that check valve is removed and that goes down and on top, and there is, it's solid. And without the check valve on, you can put the circlip back in there, and this lifter is now solid. And so that's what I did, and I made up 10 of them and put them into the bottom 5 cylinders. And the other thing I had to do was some of the push rods turned up like this. These are aftermarket ones, and they arrived from America when I bought the original engine parts, so we had to make more of these. So I got some of these adjusters, and these push rods were cut off at the right length, an adapter made, and these type of fittings were then put onto the end of the push rod to make them adjustable. And so then I could turn the engine over and adjust the tappets in the normal way, because I could, even though the rocker shafts, the rocker only have one tappet to adjust them for clearance on both valves, I could then adjust the clearance by adjusting that. And I just put 4 and 6 thou cold on the clearances, and I hear them occasionally, they get a bit clattery, but that's probably because the heads are expanding and the clearances open up, but it's fine, and that fixed it. And what a lot of work, I just couldn't figure it out for a long time, and engineers and other people experienced in the motor trade say no, they should run upside down. What's the problem? They can't understand why they're not working, and they weren't. And my theory is, and if you've got a better one you might let me know in the notes, but my theory is that bottom chamber, the bottom, oh, that's something going apart now. But the bottom chamber, when they're upside down, I think with the gas pressure in the crankcase, which is slightly positive to push the oil out of the oil tank, I think the gas pressure in the crankcase was working its way through this check valve at the bottom, and then you ended up with a gas bubble on the top here, and therefore that gas bubble wouldn't allow the solid lift to become solid when it activated by the cam. That's the only thing I can think of. Anyway, I've got no worries now because it starts up, and as you see, it just runs beautifully. It really is very pleasing. And so I've put a nameplate on here. I'll put my name and a nod to the Yamaha Warrior top end, intercooled 12 litre, 372 kilowatts. That's about 500, and the torque. Now I know there'll be a few of you who are going to argue the point about this, but I'm going to increase the RPM from 2230 up to 25 and maybe 2700 RPM. The prop can do 27, but there might be a limiting factor about that, because this is a class tractor, agricultural tractor air cleaner, and I spotted it at a Wreckers and I couldn't believe it. It just went straight on. You know, you can't believe your luck sometimes, and it looks good. And the air element, they are even though they're not that big, they have an enormous capacity for clogging, because otherwise an agri farm you'd be changing them every 5 minutes. And to date, even though it's only an 8 litre engine, I've got a restrictor gauge on here, and it's showing no signs of being restricted at up to 2230 RPM at 10 pounds boost. And like, that's a lot of air, and so far it's good. But as you go up in RPM, the CFM might overwhelm it. I'll get to see, so I'll take it to where it just starts to show, and hopefully that's at least 25. And if I make another couple of horsepower per cylinder, and I've got 14 of them, that would be another 28 horsepower. It's easy to make bulk horsepower when you have lots of cylinders. And if this is around 480 now, which I think it might be, you know, we're going to hit 500 with those extra RPMs. Shouldn't be any problem at all. And the injector readings for flow should verify that, because we think it's very close to 500 now, so this information should come right. And I've just got the prop as an airboat type, for the users that don't know. This engine would be for an airboat, and the air flow is going this way and out that way, which you'll probably see in the movie, in the video. And so it's serious power. Well, probably about 1800 pounds of thrust or something like that. It's colossal. The other thing I'm very happy with is this intercooler. I made the biggest one I could, and the turbo at the moment is starting to boost even in manifold vacuum. At 5 inches of mercury it starts going off, and at full power this is about 130 degrees here. It's so hot you can't touch it, and over here you can still put your hand on it. It's working really well. I'm not suffering any pressure drop problems. I'm stoked with it. And the turbocharger, which is a Borg Warner type, it was purpose built by a mob down in Christchurch, New Zealand, called TurboCare, and the scroll is very small, and this thing answers. It really gets on with it. And I'm only using about 3/4 throttle, and when I get to 5 pounds of boost, I just drop the throttle and just leave it, and the engine will just keep on going up and up, and this just keeps pushing harder and harder and get right up to 12 pounds on only about 3/4 throttle. So it's really stonking. The trouble is the fuel burn is about 10 litres in 10 minutes, which is horrendous. Another problem I had with it was it knocking or detonating or pinking, are the expressions for the term, and it didn't happen all the time. When it was initially tuned, there was no sign of that condition, and then over the weeks and months that I was running it, I started to hear it, and so somebody suggested I put avgas in it. Well, I couldn't believe the difference. The thing just took off. It literally went berserk. It was like adding another few cylinders to the engine. It just came alive, and the response now, it's unbelievable. And I've got 98 in it now, and so that 98 grade fuel, which will also degrade if it's not turned over quick enough, is the source now for my fuel, and it works very well. That's about, in this country, it's about $3 something a litre, I think, and the avgas is about $4.05 depending on where you buy it. So it's wild when you're starting to put the quantities of fuel through. So the 98 is the solution, very safe, and the engine will probably tolerate it even if it's a little bit of degradation. The next job I'm going to do is, because it's burning so much fuel, I'm going to tone down the anger out of the prop, and because the turbo's working in manifold vacuum, at about 5 inches of mercury the turbo starts working, and by the time you're up to 0, you know, it's warming the intercooler up and you can feel it's really working. So what I want to do is knock the pitch back and have the engine drive the propeller right up to 0, which is atmospheric pressure, without boost, and I can run it in that range and happily run it without massive fuel consumption. Then after that, with more power, the turbo will start kicking in, and we'll use the extra RPM to make the thrust, you know, on the pitch. So when I do it, I think I'll try knocking it back just 3 degrees. That might be enough, and that's the plan, to make it a bit more economic to run, because it is frightening. So I've got a standalone air fuel ratio gauge on here, which I just disconnected, and the mixtures are really good. It starts up cold on about 13 to 1, warms up to 14, and then when you get into start making boost at say 0 on the gauge, it's getting into 12, and it stays at 12 right up to about 5 pounds of boost, and then it drops right back to 10, you know, and you're really using the fuel there. But it's really safeguards the engine from anything nasty happening. You know, you don't really know whether everything's the same when you're only measuring the exhaust O2 at one point at the outlet. So it's not a measure of each cylinder. So by running that really rich, I'll be happy to use the fuel and know that I'm not going to get into a detonation in the engine grenade, because it could just happen in, you know, milliseconds. You can melt pistons. Very nasty, very nasty. So very happy with that. So that's the next mission with the engine, is to knock that propeller back a bit and give me more range for running the engine without going into boost. And I always like to run it for at least half an hour when I start it, you know, to give it a good warm up. In the cooler months I have to use a generator and put it onto an element in the tank, because there's so much air to flow across the engine in the cooler conditions of winter, and the oil just won't heat up. So I use the generator to help that. Of course, if you go to full power, the oil heats up very quickly, but still not before you've drained the oil tank. So that's the plan there. So we'll finish up by starting it up again and finish there. But that's what it is. In case you didn't know what the engine was made of, it's Yamaha XB Warrior 1700cc V-twin, true capacity 835cc a cylinder. So if you Google that, you'll see 2005, I think 2006, 2007 in there. That's what the top ends are, and they've got, unfortunately, with twin plug ignition. So these are the LS1 type ignition coils, 2 on each head. It's a pain in the ass for the wiring, of course, but pulls up the top of the cylinders. They actually look quite good, and all late model radials had low tension ignition coils, you know, up on the head. So that's quite nice, and it looks quite good. I've got some lagging here to help keep the heat out a little bit, but really probably doesn't need it. But even though it looks a bit like a woolly mammoth, it does protect the coils a bit here and with the air going through. So there's nothing to do about making the turbo work better. It's just a bit of shielding for the engine here, you know, where it's going in close to the head and whatnot. And all that seems to be working really well. Current hours, it's only done 35, so hopefully a long way to go yet with a bit of fun. And I'll just start this up again and leave it running for you, and we'll finish the video. So thanks again for your interest, and sorry it took me a while to get around to this, but I needed to be sure that it was all working properly. So here we are. So cheers, and look after yourself. So priming pump on, wait for the oil pressure to rise, turn on the ignition, oil pressure rising, turn off the priming pump and hit the